Hi, Rob Dominic, MLTI Ambassador. In this video, I'm going to be explaining how to use Pear Deck as a tool in the math classroom to be able to see students thinking digitally. So that means this could be used remotely with hybrid or even in person still. Obviously, the big problem with math digitally is that you can't just see students' written work step by step. Um, Now, it's not going to be the same online no matter what. You can't replicate it. It's true, but you can still get the core idea. And the core idea is that you want to see students thinking. You want to be able to understand if they know what to do step by step in a process in math and solving equations or simplifying fractions, adding, subtracting integers, whatever it may be. So Pear Deck is going to be a great tool for this, to be able to help us understand student thinking with certain problems. I have an example here using two-step equations, which is a big one in middle school math. And as you can see here, with just a slight change of the questions that are asked, you can end up using this tool pretty well. Instead of just saying solve this, which you may not do anyways, you may not just have students just straight up solve stuff. You may ask them more about their thinking and their process of what's going on, because that's going to give you a better insight. So by saying, what's the first step to do to solve this equation? And in this case, students would drag a dot and they would slide it over to what the first step would be. You can get a snapshot of, do they have the right idea to start with? Next, similar fashion, drag the numbers to show the order needed to solve a two-step equation. And excuse me, at the bottom here, there's a 1 and a 2 where they would drag it and label the first and then the second step of how they would solve equations. So do they understand to get rid of the constant first and then isolate the coefficient? Pretty much the same idea. If students are doing this, if they're labeling that correctly, then I have a better idea if they are really understanding the material. Now they might just guess and maybe get it right, but hey, that could happen in the classroom too. They could just be guessing and writing down work or making it look correct enough, and they might be getting by no matter what. But if we're doing this over and over again, I'm pretty sure you're going to understand the students that are getting it and the students that are not. Next. Now, at this point, I did have them solve it, write out an equation to solve it. Now, they could do this on Google, on the Google slide with Pear Deck. They can either write it out and try to use their mouse, or if they have a tablet, it's even better. Or they could just use the text. They can use the text function on slides on Pear Deck and try to solve it that way. We'll show you that in a second. That's fine. But we're building up to that every time. So here's another example. What are you going to do second to solve the equation? So they have to think this through. All right, I'm going to get rid of the constant, and then I'm going to isolate the variable. And then they have an example to actually solve it out. So I'm not only going by having them solve 10, 15 questions like this over and over again, where it is difficult to see the work written out. Not impossible, but difficult. I'm getting an insight into their thinking along the way. Okay, and so on and so forth. So I'll give you an example of this. I'll go to this as a student, and they join it by going to joinpd.com. You can see the instructions would be right here. And then the IPW KFZ. So they better join this. With their own Google accounts, of course. And this is what they would then see. And right now it is on student paced, so they could click through as they want to. That's the other nice benefit. They can go however fast or slow that they would like to. So this is the dot that they would drag. What would you do first? Okay. So they could drag it over. Order the ways to solve two-step equation. And then here they could write it out. They could change the size and try to make it a little bit neater. And they could show with a mouse. And again, it's not perfect, but it's not too bad to have them write it out like this. Take some fine tuning and some some hand-eye coordination, and it gets a little messy, of course. They could also use the text function. Instead of writing it out, they could use the text, which makes it a little bit neater, potentially, depending what you're getting into. Obviously, it's not as robust as using exponents and other notation for math, but they could do it that way as well. And that's why not every slide is solving it like this, because that does get kind of cumbersome. And here we are, we're back to what would you do second, right? So this is what it looks like from the student side. And if I go back to the teacher view, I can now see the responses from the students for each slide. So here's the first one. This is what it looks like. And again, I can see a whole bunch of dots on the screen. If there's a bunch of students, and I can see, all right, well, look to see who's got it way over here. Who's saying to add 12, even though it already is a plus 12. And you can click on that, and you can find out who the student is. So you can either go help them in person or, communicate with them virtually, whatever your method may be. So that way you can follow up with them. So Pear Deck does a nice job being able to have you be able to see the student work at a quick glance, and all of their work, in fact, at once. Okay, all of their work at once to be able to see things. Okay. So next, to be able to make this, there's a few ways. You can either find one already made. You can make your own. In this case, I used some questions of my own here. Right, for our purposes, there are usually two parts in an expression or equation, yada, yada, yada. So I made up this question. And then on the add-on on Google Slides, which is, right, the add-ons, you can go get them, and then you can add Pear Deck to it. You can use a set of already created options and just edit them, which is what I did here. So I've got this person asking a question. I just edited the question, and it's a text slide. Or you could just make your own slide completely. If I add a slide here, I can now go back and say, I want this to be a text, a multiple choice, a number answer, a website, let them draw on it, or allow them to drag something. So if I want them to be able to draw on it, to be able to write on it, I click that, and then it will add this little indicator at the bottom that this is now a draw slide. So when the time comes, so I can edit this, whatever I would like, and then when it goes onto the Pear Deck presentation, right, that's what it will look like. It will look like this exactly, but the students will have the interactive piece to it. All right. So use this as you may, but the idea here is just to change the exact expectation of what you're asking the students to show. You're may not be asking them to show work step by step all the time. Sometimes, sure, right? You want them to be able to write it out, but it's not as easy. They know it's not as easy. But think about diving into their thinking more. Ask them to explain themselves more, right? Have them dig into their thinking. Is it correct or not? And that's where you're going to get some good indication anyways if they're on the right track, right? I think it's just as valuable as seeing the students write out their work because you get to see where the misconceptions are coming from. So check out Pear Deck. Try it out. If you have more questions about a more in-depth look, check out the information slide that we have made, or feel free to contact us and we'll be able to follow up with you to help you out with that. Thanks.